With the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim Daf Pei. We are dedicating today's class Le'ilui Nishmas, Rabbi Shalman's grandfather, Yerachmiel ben Yaakov Olav Shalom. We're going to continue to learn the Braisa that we began at the bottom of Daf Ayin Tes Amud Beis. That was the Braisa that was the source, according to everyone, to the Shita of Rav, in this fantastic concept that if exactly half of the people are tar, but exactly half are tamei, in other words, you don't have roiv called that are tamei, says the Braisa, that everyone is going to make the Pesach Rishon, Elama, halalu oisim la'atzman, v'halalu oisim la'atzman. In other words, the people that are pure have to take precautions not to become impure. Part of that will be for them not to do it together. But no one is going to have to bring the Pesach Sheni. Now, when Roiv of the Kahal is Tamei, then we don't say, according to the Tanach of the Braisa, that Halolu Oisam La'atzmam, Halolu Oisam La'atzmam, because we have a value known as Ein Korban Tzibur Chaluk. We don't want to divide the Tzibur. So when the Roiv is Tamei, then the Tahoidim bring their Karbanos together with the Tameim. Even though that means that the Tumah will be spreading amongst the Tahoidim, which is something not ideal, and even if we're going to say that Tumah Dechuya B'Tzibur, nevertheless, the concept of Ein Korban Tzibur Chaluk demands for everyone to do it together. This is where we already learned yesterday. What we're going to add today, aside of learning more shitas in this Braisa, is that we're going to learn Rabbi Yehuda that he extends the concept of Ein Tzibur Chaluk even when it's Mechza al Mechza. It's that important not to divide the tzibur. Now, Bachlal, we're going to learn on Daf Pei many cases of communal tumah, and as we already learned above, that according to everyone, this tumah dispensation is when the people are tamei with corpse tumah. Regarding people that are tamei with sheretz tumah, if roiv are tamei b'sheretz tumah, that's really a debate, and some opinions say that they are also going to be tumah d'chuya b'tzibur. Other peoples disagree with that. But when it comes to the tumah of Zav, which is this unnatural seminal emission, not that happened once, but that happened twice with many other pratim that we will not repeat now. But when there is tumah Zav, everyone agrees that even if the roiv of the kol are tamei b'tumah Zav, which means that they may not bring the Pesach, they will not be allowed to bring the Pesach. We're going to see that they don't create any sort of dispensation, and how that will affect various scenarios where the majority of the people have Tumei Meis, the minority have Tumah Zav, the majority have Tumah Zav, the minority have Tumas Meis. We're going to learn cases where a third are Tahar, a third have Tumei Meis, a third have Tumah Zav, and we're going to learn very fascinating scenarios and rules. The majority of the people will never be deferred to Pesach Sheni. Ein tashlumim the Pesach if the Pesach Rishon was brought b'tumah at all, and other moedidika rules and scenarios all about this concept of the general principle that tumah d'chuy b'tzibur by the Korban Pesach. On Daf Pei Amud Beis, we're going to start a new Mishnah. The Mishnah on Daf Pei Amud Beis is speaking about a case where the call is tahar. Korban Pesach has to be brought b'tara. We're going to be focusing on a individual's Korban Pesach, who after it being brought, b'diavad, post facto, we discovered that there was some tumah there. And we're going to see exactly when we do say tzitz meratzah, which is a rule throughout, that after the fact, if a korban was brought b'tumah, it is effective, or it affects, it's received by Hashem, it affects its ritzui because of the tzitz. And when will we not say tzitz meratzah? And we're going to introduce today a very important rule known as Tumas Tahoim. Now, the word Tahoim means the deep. Tumas Tahoim means that if there is a source of Tumah, let's speak about corpse Tumah, that no one ever knew was in a certain place. It was very deep underground. It wasn't that there was a grave that people used to know where it is, and now we forgot where it is. That means we don't know where the Tumah is. We might have forgotten altogether that there is tumah here, but it was once known. That's the normal tumah. Halacha differentiates and says, and this is halacha l'Moshe Messina, that if there was tumah that no one ever knew about, Rashi is a little bit more lenient. He's a little bit broader in his application. That if there was never a certainty about the tumah, even if people always knew that there's a doubt. But if it was never at least once known for sure that there is Tumah here, that's called Tumas Tohaim, Halacha L'Moshe Missinai, that sits will be Maratza on Tumas Tohaim. We're speaking about you only find out about that Tumah after a carbon was brought. And then we're going to have to see how far do we extend, where do we apply this Halacha L'Moshe Missinai dispensation that sits Maratza al Tumas Tohaim, and we're going to have a Moededika application of Tumas Tohaim when it comes to a Zav bringing a carbon Pesach. We'll speak it out at the end of today's daf, where the Gemara is we're going to leave off today, is going to conclude that this Halacha L'Moshe Missinai does not apply to Tumas Tohaim from Tumas Ziva. People are thinking, how can there be a Tumas Tohaim and Tumas Ziva? We'll explain that as we learn it inside. Chevra, we left off yesterday 5 lines from the top of the Amid on Daf Pei, but we left off the middle of a Braisa. It's kedai to spend a minute and to quickly chaz it over inside the Braisa. The Braisa begins on Daf Ayin Tes Amid Beis, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam v'sha'ar kol niv'u dvar. All right, Chevra Freilach says the Braisa. Gufa. The Gemara is quoting in the middle of the Braisa. This was the Braisa that was brought to substantiate Shitas Rav against both versions of Rav Kahana. Again, so here the Tanakama will say that they don't bring it together. True, ein carbon sibur chaluk, but we only say ein carbon sibur chaluk when roiv are tummy. If it's not roiv, even though the Tana holds that everyone is going to bring Pesach Rishon, the people that are tummy will consider themselves as a majority. When majority are tummy b'tmei meis to bring the carbon Pesach, fine. But they don't bring it together. How? I'm just reading, we're chazening over the Braisa. The moment it's more Tameim, more means, according to this Tana, even only a majority of one, then Afilo Echad Yasu B'Tuma. Yasu B'Tuma means you don't have 2 different groups. Everyone commingles. When people commingle, there's going to be a spreading of Tuma. We don't care. Not because, God forbid, we don't care. Because here, we apply the last line, Lefisha Ein Carbon Sibur Chaluk, which we never divide the community. You know, many people consider this a Doiraisa, Loises Goidudu, which also means don't make groups. Now, we all know that we have plenty of groups, so we have to know when we value each one following their tradition. There is a place for that. When we value everyone joining together, this Tana makes it very clear. Half and half, everyone should do their own thing separately. If it's majority, then the majority will triumph and everyone does it together. Then we have, guys, let's remember these details. Rabbi Elazar ben Masya says in the bottom of the Amid, he agrees with the concept that, the Torah says if the majority are Tameh, you bring it Batuma. But how do you determine majority? Not a majority of 1, but a majority at least of 2. Only 1 does not tip the scale, right? By the way, I want to make something clear. Even according to Rabbi Elazar ben Masya, 1 will tip the scale. The power of 1, everyone agrees to, but it's not like let's today stick to the number 100. There's 100 people, 50, half and half means 50 are Tomei, 50 are Tahor. 1 more Tomei would mean 51 versus 49, 51, 49. Rabbi Elazar ben Masya says that if it's 51 versus 49, it's not enough. You have to have 52. But this 52nd will make all the difference. There's always going to be the 1 that will tip the scale, but it's not the 1 that's more than the majority. Or I'll tell you even better. I take back what I said. It's not 51 to 49. That's already 2. Shkoyach. If you have 100 people, 50-50, that's half and half. If you have 101 people, 51-50, that's what Rabbi Elazar ben Masya is saying. It's only 1 more Tomei, it's not good. But if there's 102 people, in other words, it's 52 versus 50, or if it's 51-49, if the majority of 2, then you do tip the scale. We spoke about yesterday, the pshat, the drush, only ba'achat does not justify. Now, the second line, wow. He considers this mechza al mechza. He says that if you have each shevet is viewed individually, but you don't say, 1 out of 12 is a minority. It's like we learned, remember, kol kavua ke mechza al mechza. Every shevet is such a powerful entity by itself that one shevet right? That's Tamei, and all the Shvatim are Tohidim. It's like half and half. Halal oisim la'atzman, v'halal oisim la'atzman, which is moededik. And my Tama, where does Rab Shimon get that from? My Tama, the Rab Shimon, because Kosavar Shevet Echad Ikra Kol. So it's Kol versus Kol. So it's not about the numbers, it's about the definition of a group. Now we have one shita, that's where we left off yesterday. Now, Rabbi Yehuda agrees to Rab Shimon, but he has one additional point. Rab Shimon says that the rule that Ein Korban Sibur Chaluk is applied even when it's half and half, even when it's mechza al mechza. So we're going to have an amazing thing that Rabbi Yehuda says that even if only one shevet echad is tamei and all the shvatim are tohidim, everyone should do it together, not separately. Yasu betuma. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda says she'ein korban sibur chaluk, which means Rabbi Yehuda will hold, going back to the Tanakama, let's not view shvatim. If it's half and half, without looking at the shvatim, Rabbi Yehuda will agree with the Tanakama that everyone brings it in Pesach Rishon, but he will disagree with the Tanakama that halalu la'atzman b'halalu la'atzman. Rabbi Yehuda always says if everyone is bringing the Pesach during Rishon, we never make an effort to separate the pure from the impure. The tumah will spread. Well, the advantage will be that everyone will be together. And ain't sibur or ain't korban sibur chol. Okay, says the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda savar shevik.
So he holds one shevet as like mechza al mechza, half.
Avremo Rabbi Chain, Rabbi Shimon also holds that. Rabbi Shimon also holds that each shevet is called a kol, and therefore if one shevet is tamei and the 11 shvatim are tohidim, it's mechza al mechza. Even Rabbi Shimon holds that, but they don't bring it together. Because Rab Shimon, like the Tanakama, which like Rav, they say, fine, halalu la'atzman, halalu la'atzman. What's Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Shimon are not standing opposites. They are together. Rabbi Yehuda goes one step further. Good. Now, let's read it inside. And the Gemara explains that Rabbi Yehuda holds Shevet Echad Ikra Kol. So Koydem Kol, he, like Rab Shimon, will hold the Rabbi Chain, v'havaluhu palgo palgo. However, unlike Rab Shimon, and unlike the Tanakama that say that if it's palgal, palga, then you don't say that ain korban sibur chaluk. Palgal, palga, you do it separately. Rabbi Yehuda holds that even when it's only palgal, palga, but ain korban sibur chaluk, and therefore of the kol betuma. Beautiful. Right. Itman. Hoy, we're gonna have all types of applications of this din that when there's tuma, whether it's roiv, whether it's mechza, gewaldik. What happens with the group now? What happens with Pesach Sheni? What type of tuma is counted? What type of tuma is not counted? Now, what would Rav hold? Rav already said, what do? Everyone brings it, right? That's what we learned yesterday. That's what we began today. Elamah, they don't bring it together. As the Gemara will clarify, Rav is not saying what one should do according to him. We're going to see what's bothering Rav. According to whom is there a problem? So before we learn the problem, we're going to learn the solution. All of us, those of us who are learning, we're lucky. We get the answers before the questions, which is why we don't appreciate enough what we have. So we're going to learn a solution before we learn the problem. So what's the solution? Listen to this. You take one Jew and you make him tamei. What did you accomplish now? It's no longer 50-50. Right now you have roiv tuma, and now you do it all together. If it would have been exactly half and half, then you would do it separately. Rav had no problem with that. That's what we learned on Daf Ayin Tes on the bottom. The Brisa that we began again to review also had no problem. We'll see why there is a problem. But the solution is you make a person tamei. How do you make them tamei? This is important. Not betumas meis, dafke betumas sheretz. Now, I want to speak out something very important. When someone becomes tamei b'tamei meis, if not for the dispensation of Tumah D'choy B'tzibur, they're out, because it takes them 7 days to become pure, even undergoing all of the steps. Tamei Sheretz, it's much easier. If I become Tamei B'tamei Sheretz on the 14th, even though today I'm Tamei, as long as I go to the mikveh today, then tonight, by head of Shemesh, I'm completely pure, and I can eat kachim. So this person, aside of the fact that now that you have a roiv betuma, Aside of that, Tuma is the choye betuma. Tuma is the choye betzibur. Aside of that, just to know it's a much lesser Tuma. Now, says the Gemara 1 second. What was bothering Rav? Don't tell me Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda. No, Rav, Daf Ayin Tesam and Aleph, we had Rav and the two versions of Rav Kahana. Rav holds like the Tanakam of the Baraisa that we began today. No problem if they don't do it all together. So why do you have to make a roiv? And amazing, you make someone tummy. So the Gemara answers, Amri Yachomai Skinan. In other words, the Tohidim are in a minority. You already have a majority. So hold on, guys. If you already have a majority, Rav also holds, this is very important, Rabbi, that Rav, the Tanakama, Rab Shimon, Mechza al Mechza is where you do it separately. Once you have a roiv, you do it together. So Iyachi have a little bit tameim. So why do you have to make someone tamei na abdu kol betuma? So here the Gemara clarifies that Rav subscribes to the Tana Rabbi Elazar ben Masya that says that when you have 101 people, 51 are tamei, 50 are tahar. Even though it's a majority, but it's only a majority of one. So therefore what? It's like half and half, right? But the problem is if it's like half and half, so what? So what? Rav holds that when it's half and half, or halachically half and half, everyone brings Pesach Rishon, but the Tohidim separately, the Tameim separately. So what? So do it that way. So what's the kasha? Why would you make someone Tamei? Answers the Gemara, Elohachi Ka'amar. You know what Rav is saying? Rav is not speaking to people that hold with him. Now that we brought the Baraisa, now that we introduced the Tana Rebbe Yehuda, that says Palga, Loyav the Kula Betuma. If someone will subscribe that what? That you don't follow Rabbi Yehuda. By Palga and Palga, when there's no Rav, you do it separately. But on the other, in other words, you have to do it separately. And they're also going to hold like Rabbi Yehuda that says Ein Korban Tzibur Chaluk. So you got yourself a problem now. In other words, if you want to ascribe to both values, which are contradicting each other, if you want to say, no, if it's half and half, then you can't spread the tumah. But on the other hand, Ein Korban Tzibur Chaluk. We don't want to have two different groups. This happens so often. The application is very narrow here. That's a struggle of our lives, my friends.
Is the Ein Tzibur Chaluk mid'oraisa?
Yes, according to Tzvika, yes, Ein Tzibur Chaluk is going to do. And that's everyone's question.
So why is this according to Rabbi Yehuda then? I mean,
because Tzvika, we don't apply. How can you have a nusach? How can you have 13 nuschos? How can you have Menhagi Chabad and Menhagi Ashkenaz? In other words, there are times that we do things separately. There are times that we parade. We got to be all together. So what? You're going to have a person that's going to feel trapped. On one hand, if you don't have Reif Tameim, then you get Mechza Mechza. You do it separately. But I don't want to do it separately. So Rav says, I have a solution. Make it into a majority Tameim. So Metamen Echa Mehem B'Sheretz. And now the Metamen Echa B'Sheretz, you have Roiv that are Tamei. Okay. Says Ula, same thing. If you have Mechza al Mechza, and you have someone that is uncomfortable by saying Halal La'atzman, they want to do it all together, but you have to do it, but maybe you can only do it all together when you're Roiv. So Ula says, instead of making someone Tamei, listen to a solution, another solution. Send one who is Tahar. Don't add the Tamei. You guys, take away one Tahar. Take away, how do you take away one Tahar? Not by making him Tamei, by sending him away to a location where he's exempt thereof because he's far away from Yerushalayim. And now count again, and now you're going to have a Roif Tamei. You guys are good? There's a Bamba Kasher from Tosfos. He says, why are you sending away a Tamei? If you are beginning with 50-50, you know what he says? Why are you sending away Tahar? Thank you. Why are you sending away a Tahar? Send away a Tamei. Send away a Tamei. Now you're going to have what? Roif Tahirim. Do the Pesach Betara. Now, guys, the guys who are Tamei, there's a Pesach Sheni. If you are uncomfortable by having everyone bring the Pesach Rishon, and you're saying, I'm not comfortable with everyone doing it separately. Do it all together. I don't know if you can do it all together because so many Tanoim say that if it's 50-50, you can't do it all together. I don't know what to do. So why are you adding Tumah? Why are you sending someone away which is creating Roif Tameim? No, create Roif Tameim, send away a Tamei person. And once the person is not here, he's not counted. This is Moedadik. Tosfos gives many answers. One answer is, all of them are amazing and very important. One is that we try to create a scenario where as many people as possible bring the Pesach Rishon. There is an up to that. No, it's plan B. Pesach Sheni is plan B. We prefer plan A. So if you're going to create Roif Tameim, right, which is what's happening when you're sending away someone who's Tahar Baruch, you're sending away a Tahar, you're creating Roif Tameim. You know what the upside is? Now that you have Roif Tameim, everyone is going to bring it now. Pesach Rishon. Not only everyone is going to bring it, now that you have Roif Tameim, they're going to bring it together. If you're going to say someone who's Tamei, you're going to have Roif Ta'irim. So you won't have the dispensation of Pesach being brought to Tumah. Fine. Only the Ta'irim will bring it. The Tameim, B'chlal won't bring it now. Chap. Anyways, there's many other amazing answers, but it's Pashat late. Let's go right. So now, Frek the Gemara, why didn't Ula give Rav's solution? Ula is also going to make it Roif Tameim. Roif Tameim, the advantage will be everyone brings it together. Why are you sending someone away? The Yatamenu B'Sheret say like Rav. Oh, so says the Gemara, really there's another machlokes that Ula holds not like Rav, that Shoichten V'Zorken Al Tamei Sheretz, even though someone is Tamei B'Tamei Sheretz, you don't count him amongst those who are Tamei, like we explained, because unlike Tamei Meis, that has a whole procedure that will not be fit to eat it tonight, even if someone is Tamei B'Tamei Sheretz now, that's only now. Guys, don't forget, he's not allowed to enter the Azara. He doesn't have to enter the Azara. Not every Jew entered the Azara. Only the Jews that were representing their group, the one that had the animal for all the other people that registered on it. He was the one that entered the Azara. And by the time there's an obligation to eat it, which is only at night, as long as the Tamei Sheretz went to the mikvah, at night he's tahor. Now really, that's the whole question. That's the machlokes. We spoke about this before. There's a machlokes whether someone who's Tamei B'Tamei Sheretz, shoichten v'zarkin, or ain't shoichten v'zarkin. So since Ula holds Shoichten V'Zarkin, so making him Tamei B'Tamei Sheretz doesn't add him to the Tameim. You're not upping the Roiv of Tameim. So the Gemara counters still. Why are you sending him away? I get it that making Tuma Sheretz is not going to help him. So make him V'Yatamenu B'Meis. Answers the Gemara, no. There's another issue. Let's put aside Pesach. We learned that every Yom Tov, including Pesach, every Jew is obligated to bring, aside of the Oilas Re'iyah, you have to bring a Shalmei Chagiga. Shalmei Chagiga is brought on the 15th. So he says that if you're going to make a person Tamei B'Tamei Meis, is Matcheu Atam Chagigasoi, you're taking away his ability to bring a carbon Chagiga. Says the Gemara, hold on. Hashtanami Matcheu Atam Pischoi. You're sending someone away. He's not going to bring the Pesach. Pesach is not a Kaddish. So the Gemara says that's not a problem. Because Meila putting him a Derech Rechaika, which will take him away from the obligation of bringing Pesach Rishon, that is something that you can compensate after the Avid B'Sheni. But if you're going to make him Tamei Meis, he's going to be Tamei for a whole 7 days, then he won't bring the Karban Chagiga altogether. So the Gemara says it's not true. When are we making this person Tamei? On the 14th. No, let's do a yeshiva math. When you make someone Tamei the 14th, and it takes 7 days for the person to become Tahor, count on the 14th. The 7th day is the 20th. You still have the last day of Pesach to bring the Chagiga, and we know that Chagiga has Tashlumin. Ideally, bring it on day number 1 of Yom Tov, but if you didn't bring it, you have 7 days. So the Gemara says, because I know that Pesach biblically only has 7 days. But the issue, the solution that Rav gave, and now we're going to asking, well, don't do sheretz, do a mace, is to be metama this person on the 14th when you're counting how many yidden you have to hire him and how many tameim. So you're also not pushing this person away from the chagiga. So the Gemara says it's not true. That kulu The way we view the obligation of bringing Shalmei Chagiga is that it's only payment for not bringing it on the first. It's intrinsically linked to the obligation that you have on the first. Meaning, the Chazi Berishin, someone who was fit to bring it on the first, and for whatever reason they didn't, so then they can make it up by bringing it throughout the rest of the Yom Tov. Chazi B'kulu. But if someone did not have an obligation to bring it on the first, one example will be because this person is Tamei B'Tmei Meis, so they're not even Chazi B'kulu, they cannot compensate. They never owed it on the principle, they don't have to compensate for it. Now, Pesach Sheni is different. Pesach Sheni is different. So here, sending him away is much better than making him Tamei B'Tmei Meis. Rab B'chlal doesn't have this problem. Okay, let's go back.
Wait, if you were sent away, according to Ula, you're still fit to bring the chagiga. That's the idea. Whereas
yes, you're fit because you're fit because you're not tamei. You know, it's not a intrinsic. It's not a psula guf. Just your circumstances don't allow you. It's a technical thing. It's an external thing. Now, two solutions. Rav Nachman is also being very practical. Rav Nachman, this is not an interaction between Rav Nachman and Ula. This is the chevra.
If you send the guy away,
yes,
he doesn't get to do the Pesach.
But he does
the Pesach with everybody.
Then the guy who's being sent away, he will do the Pesach Sheni. He's going to come back.
There's no Pesach Sheni if the whole kahal brings it betuma. Do we still have a Pesach Sheni in such a case?
When the call brings it in Pesach Rishon, then the people that did not bring it then bring a Pesach Sheni. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Very good. Now this conversation, Rav Nachman was not present, just to get the technical wordings over here. The Chevra sheared with Rav Nachman what Ula said. So Omar Luhu, that's in plural. Ula told, Amlo Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman told the people that told him what Ula said. He says, theoretically, very nice. But Zilu v'Amri le'Ula, go and tell Ula, man soy is the akar sikei umashkene v'roi. Find me a person that's going to undo the pegs of his tent and take away his tent and run away. Find me a Jew that's going to agree to go b'derech rechoika. If he would have lived nowadays, every Lubavitcher would do it.
Find a Pesach program.
Find the Jew. What's happening over here? The Jew that's running away. Because of him running away, he's promoting Achdus amongst the Jewish people. Because we're going, even though it was 50-50, even though everyone is going to bring it, but halol la'atzmam, you're not going to find a person that's going to sacrifice his ruchnius for the benefit of the call. So therefore, in other words, he's just saying that I find the Rav solution more practical. Let's go weiter. Various scenarios. It's chaval that it's late. This is so beautiful today. Itma, like this. Ruban Zavin. So we already spoke out that the community dispensation, that Pesach is brought when Roiv Artamei is, if Roiv is Tamei Meis, now we just had the Machloikas, according to some opinions, even if Roiv is Tamei Sheretz, fine. But no one says that if Roiv Artamei, because for some reason the majority of the community is Zavin, even though they may not bring Pesach Rishon, right? Even though they're Tameim, but there's no dispensation. They don't bring Pesach Rishon. Now, Roiv were Zavin. What are we going to do with them? They will not bring it on the first Pesach. And the Miyutan, Tamei Mason, they also will not bring it on Pesach Rishon, because when do we say that? If Tamei Mason is Doicha, if they're Roiv, or at least if it's 50-50, if they are in the minority, so no one now brought the Pesach Rishon. So Amarav, Oisan Tamei Mason, you know what's going to happen? They will not only can they not do the Rishon, they can't do the Sheni. Chevra, I want to add something. Not only is the Tamei Mason will not bring Pesach at all, the Zaven will also not bring it at all. We're focusing on Tamei Mason. What Rav is really saying is that if that scenario were to happen, there'll be no Pesach. And he explains, Rishon Layavdi, because the Havali Meuta. And the rule is Umeyuta, even though they're Tameim is doicha. No, Roiv has to be Tamei Meis to be doicha. Meyuta liyavdi berish. So let them do it b'sheni. B'sheni liyavdi. Look at this. Because kol heicha the avdi tzibur berishon. if at least the tzibur did it b'rishon, then an individual can do it b'sheni. First wide line. But kol echad Elyahu and tzibur b'rishon, which is what happened over here. Guys, no one brought it. The Zavin also were not allowed to bring it. So no one brought it. If no one brings the Pesach Rishon, so then Elyahu and Yachid b'sheni. And again, like the Rishonim point out, really, no one brings it. But we're going to focus on the Tmei Mason because there is a Chiddush here. You know where you'll see the Chiddush when Shmuel argues with Rav. Shmuel, here again, Shmuel here did not interact with Rav, but Shmuel heard what Rav said. So he told the people that shared Shitas Rav, the second wide line, no, I disagree with that. Zilu Amrulei La'aba, Abba's a Lashon Chavivus. La'aba, according to many, was actually the name of Rav, and they were very close, right? Rav was Reb Abba Richa. Go tell Abba that it says in Pashas Bahaloischa v'yasu b'nei Yisrael esa Pasach b'moyadoi that the Yidden should make the Pesach in their appointed time, which means Pesach has to be brought. Is my avada delay? What are you telling me? You're telling me that there's a scenario where there's no Pesach. I can't accept it. So Amalahu Zilu Amrulei. So when I've heard Shmuel's opposition, can be that there's a case that there'll be no Pesach. I don't understand. He says that ki havu kulu zavin mayavada delay. Let me ask you, Shmuel. And guys, there's no machlokes. If every Jew is a zav, are they going to bring a Koren Pesach? Not at all. Meaning they cannot bring it on Pesach Rishon because the Tumah of Ziva does not override the problem of Tumah. And whenever no one brings the Pesach Rishon, no one brings a Pesach Sheni. It says in the pasuk v'yasu b'nei Yisrael sa pasach b'moyadoi elo kiven de lo yafshet. Amekenish kemenish. So achanam lo yafshet. Next case. Itmar. Let's flip it now. Hoyrubim Tmei Mesim umayutun zavin. Now, when the roiv are Tmei Mesim, what do we say? Everyone brings it. The Tmeim bring it. The Hoyrim bring it together. The Zavim do not. Zavim cannot bring a carbon. So the question is, do they bring it in Pesach Sheni? Now by Pesach Sheni, these Zavim are pure. So he says that whenever the Pesach Rishon is brought, Betuma, ein tashlumim lePesach haba Betuma. So they can't bring it. That's an afuna. However, no, I disagree with you. Yesh tashlum Pesach haba Betuma. So the Zavin who are now Tahoirim, they do bring the Pesach Sheni. Now, what is their machlokes? So name a perhaps going back to the beginning of the Sol Sugya, the Banda Amar Ein Tashlumam LaPesach Haba B'Tumah. So the Yidden that were Zavim do not bring the Pesach Sheni. That's because he holds Tuma D'Choyehi B'Tzibur. Now, only Tahoirim have the power to defer others to Pesach Sheni. Only Tahoirim that bring the Pesach Rishon, Tahoirim brought it, so then the others can do the Pesach Sheni. If Tameim bring it on Pesach Rishon, which means normally everyone can bring it, so there's no deferment at all to Pesach Sheni. Now, when Roiv were Tameim, do we consider them like Tahoirim? Then, for sure, you defer the others to Pesach Sheni. But if you're going to hold Tumah D'Choyev B'Tzibur, which means they're Tamei, and again, only Tahoirim can defer, so there's no deferment, so they don't bring it. Uman the Aman, right? Rav Ada bar Ahava, that Yesh Tashlum Pesach Haba B'Tumah, he holds that Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. So the Yidden that were Tmei Mesim, since they were the Roiv, they are viewed as Tahoirim. There's no issue of Tumah. Tahoirim defer to Pesach Sheni. Even Zavim. Obviously, guys, by the Pesach Sheni, the Zavim have to be Tahoirim. Yeah, but in this month, they'll become Tahoirim. So that's one way of understanding it. The last line of the Amid Amri. So they said, Chevra, not necessarily true. Loy. Tumah D'Choyev B'Tzibur. Tumah D'Choyev B'Tzibur. Ubaha Pligi. Who told you that only Tahoirim can defer? Lavdafke. That Mar Savar, which is Rafuna. What did Rafuna say? That Ein Tashlum Pesach Haba B'Tumah Daf Ayin. I'm sorry, Daf Pei. Wow, Daf Pei with Beis. That only, like we said, only Tahara Medachya. But whenever Pesach is brought B'Tumah, right? And again, Tumah D'Choyev B'Tzibur, then there is no deferment at all for Pesach Sheni. even though you didn't allow the Zavim to bring it on Pesach Rishon, but that's the rule. Umar Savar, this is Rav Ada Barahava, correct? That afilu tuma nami medachya. Doesn't matter. Even though Pesach was brought bituma, the minority that did not bring it for whatever reason, it's not like we had in the first case that if no Pesach was brought at all, then there's no Pesach Sheni. Pesach was brought. It was taka brought bituma. Tuma is only the chuya. Doesn't matter. Whoever did not bring it gets to bring it on Pesach Sheni. And now the final case, Itmar, Hoyu, Shlishi son Zavin, 1/3 were Zavin. Shlishi son were Tahoiden. Shlishi son were Tamei Mason. What the Gemara doesn't say, that has to be spoken out, is that the third that are Tahoidim will bring Pesach Rishon. Start with that. No one is debating, not even mentioned here. What's the question now? So let's read inside. Omar Avmani Bar Patish, like this. Oisam Tamei Mason. They cannot join the Tahoidim. They cannot do the Rishon, nor they can do the Sheni. Farvaz, Berishon loy avdi. Why can't they do the Rishon? Now they're Tameim. What would justify Tamei Mason do a Rishon? When you have Roif Tameim. Now, do you have Roif Tameim? It depends. If you were to count the Zavim, not that the Zavim can bring it, but the Zavim are Tameim. If you would be allowed, so to say, to unite the 2/3 as Tameim, that would be an argument to allow them to do the Tahoidim. But you know what you do it? Because Higdilu Zavin ala Tahoidim. We add the Zavin not with the group of Tameim. We add them with the Tahoidim. You can't combine them with the Tameim. What's the logic, guys? We learned the rules. Why wouldn't you combine the Zavim with the Tamei Mason? I'll tell you why. Because since Zavim cannot bring it, it's Tameim is Doichatuma. The Torah says Zavim, even though they're Tameim, but they're not Doichatuma. So that doesn't allow you to join these groups together. So if you want to join a group together, theoretically, you put the Zavim with the Tahoidim. Not that the Zavim bring it. God forbid, the Zavim never bring a Pesach when they're in the status of Tumah, when they are Zavim. But since the Tameim, and why is the Gemara, the Elyahu of the Betuma? Because since Zavim can never bring it while they're Tamei, they don't belong in the group of the Tamei Mason. So therefore, comes to Pesach Rishon, Havale Tamei Mason, Miyuta. They're only 1/3. And what does the rule do, Miyuta? They're Tamei Mason. Well, I'm sorry, you're not right. Elyahu of the Berishon. So now, at least let them do it Pesach Sheni. Oichet nicht. The Sheni Elyahu. Why not? Because when it comes to the Pesach Sheni, Nitztarfu Zavim im Tamei Mason. Elyahu of the Berishon. You have 2 groups of people that didn't do it. So how many Jews will end up bringing it? A majority. And the rule is, Havale Ruba ve'Ruba le'matchel Pesach Sheni. In other words, you can't have the majority bringing in a Pesach Sheni. Amazing.
Wasn't wasn't it 50-50 when you just had the Tamei Mason and Tarium at the time? 50-50. So don't they do it separately for Rishon?
Yeah, that's great. But we're not deferring the majority to Pesach Sheni. We're not deferring anyone. And if there's an individual like Danny pointed out before, maybe there was a guy Derech Rechoika, he'll do Pesach Sheni. No problem. But it's Gavaldik. In other words, since the Zavim by Pesach Sheni are Tahoidim, so by Pesach Sheni time, you have a Roiv that are Tahoidim. That's the final rule. When you defer people to Pesach Sheni, it can never be the majority that were deferred. It can only be a minority. By Pesach Sheni, you have Roiv that are Mamish Tahoidim. None of them will do it. Gavaldik. So, in other words, when you have a Roiv that did Pesach Rishon and the Zavim were there, if the Zavim are in a minority, of course the Zavim will bring the Pesach Sheni when they become pure. But here you ended up only having the 3rd bringing Pesach Rishon. And now you have 2 groups that will join for Pesach Sheni, the all Tahoidim. Now you have Roiv. Okay, Chavra, these are all the cases. Now we're moving on to the new Mishnah. New Mishnah is another rule, Tumas Tahoim. We are not speaking anymore about the Roiv Tumah. We're speaking about a normal carbon Pesach that has to be brought betara. As far as all of the participants are concerned, everything was nice. The people were tired. The people were fit to eat it. The meat of the carbon Pesach was tired. The blood was, everything was good. After the fact, we found out that Oy Gewalt. Now, what was the Oy Gewalt? So there's different problems that we can find out afterwards. Ha-Pesach, that already Shenis Ragdome. But then, Shehu Tamei, guys, important. Shehu is not the person. Shehu means either the meat was Tamei already before they threw the dam, but we didn't know about it. Or now that we threw the dam, we discovered that the blood prior to it being thrown on the altar already became Tamei. But we did not know that. So, what did we learn? Hatzitz Meratza. You know, this rule that the tzitz is Meratza on Karbanos is a rule, is a generic rule. So we can use it over here. But there's an exception to that. If you discover after you throw the blood that nitma haguf, that the owner is tamei, remember that? Remember the whole rule that we kept on learning? That even according to Rav, even according to Rab Nassim, even according to the Tana Rabbi Yeshua, that if at the end of the day you didn't eat the Pesach, it's still gonna, you will still fulfill your obligation, but everyone agrees that while they did the Zrika, the owner needed to be fit. Not the meat, the owner needed to be fit. The Ba'alim have to be Roy. Everyone agreed to that. We had at various times. So here we discovered that when they did the Zrika, the person was Tamei. So we say, Ein atzitz meratza. Now, you'll bring Pesach Sheni. So tzitz is meratza for the tumah of the basar, for the tumah of the dam. The tzitz is not meratza for the tumah of the guf. Now, Pesach is not the only exception where we don't allow tzitz meratza for the person. There's another exception. And you know what? That is a nazir. Just to speak it out by heart. When a person makes a vow of nazirus, the whole system of purification, which is at the end, he's going to bring the 3 karbanos, he's going to shave his hair, he's going to burn it under the pot, and he's going to be, so to say, removed from his nazirus vow. All of that is predicated on him remaining pure. That's psukim in the Chumash. If a Nazir, he made a Nazir's vow of 1,000 days, and on the last day, Bishoigeg, he becomes Tamei B'Tmei Meis. You know what the Torah says? All of the days that he counted are erased. First, he has to become Tahar. Then he has to bring Karbanos for the sin that he became Tamei. Then he begins to count again. So if a Nazir discovers that he was Tamei, then the whole thing was worthless, because you only conclude your days of Nazirus after you counted the days. If you become Tamei, your days are discounted. Verstehst? So these are the 2 exceptions. That Hanazir and V'oisa Pesach, even though the tzitz is meratza, it's meratza al tumas adam. As we said, it's meratza for the tumah of the basar, but the ein tzitz meratza al tumas haguf. However, we do have a gewaldige exception, one exception, and that is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And what's that exception? That if the owner discovered that he was tamei b'tamei meis, but what was the tumah? There was someone that was buried so deep in the ground that we know now no one knew about it. For some reason, we discovered it now. It's called tumah of the depths. Now, Rashi emphasizes a lot that tumas tohoim doesn't mean that no one ever knew anything about it. Rashi, these are very important, these words, that no one ever knew with certainty that there was tumah here. Even if there was always upset doubt, but there was never any vadoos that was later forgotten. There was never a certainty. That's called tumah of the deep. Now, if you find a grave buried the way people are buried right now, you can never say tumas tohaim. Even though for the past 100 years, no one knew there was a cemetery here, but 1,000 years ago, people knew. That's why it's called Tohaim. In other words, if you find someone buried, kederach, people bury a body after the person passed away, whoever buried him knew about it. It was known. The Tohaim means that there's a part in the ground that it looks like virgin soil. It's so deep. No one ever dug there. Now, what happened? Who knows? Whether there was an accident that no one knew about, and over thousands of years, a body went all the way down there. V'chule, v'chule. That's called tumas tohaim. So nitma from tumas tohaim, even though first rule in the Mishnah is that tzitz meratza, let's focus on the Pesach, does not cover Tumas haguf, if the person now, even after the fact, was discovered to be tamei, upa, you got yourself a problem, you got to bring Pesach Sheni. There's one exception, that if we discover after the fact that the person was tamei b'tamei mace, but the mace was found in a place that we know that it was never certain that there was a mace there, then tzitzis maratzim. Says the Gemara, focusing on the beginning of the Mishnah began by saying that after you sprinkled the blood, then you found out. No, it's time of the Nizrak. Meaning, Avol Noida, but if you knew prior to the sprinkling of the blood of the Korban Pesach, that what? That the blood became tamei, that the meat became tamei, and you sprinkled the blood, then loy meratza. So says the Gemara, hold on, it's not so simple. V'riminu, contradiction. It says in a Braisa, al mahatzitz meratza. It says, look, al hadam. Now, guys, I know that this Braisa is not only speaking about Korban Pesach. So what? It's speaking about all kachim. That tzitzis meratza, al adam, v'al basar, v'al chelev, that became tamei, ben b'shoigeg, ben b'mezid. Chayre b'mezid means even though you knew about it and you should not have sprinkled the blood, but you did it already. Ben b'oines, ben b'rotzain, ben b'yochid, ben b'tzibur. So afilu b'mezid contradicts the statement, the implication of our Mishnah. Answers the Gemara, Amar Avina, no, that do masai, right? Ben b'shoigeg, ben b'mezid. When the Braisa was speaking about the shoigeg and b'mezid, it means, how did the blood become tummy? How did the meat become tummy? So God forbid there was a kohen that was a tzeduki and who knows what, and he dafka made a tummy. There is where we tolerate sitz maratza, but only if we found out after zrikas adam. To masay ben b'shoigeg b'mezid, hurtza. But if you knew about the tuma while you sprinkled the blood, then it's not going to be maratza. It's the zrika needed to be b'shoigeg. B'shoigeg hurtza b'mezid loy hurtza. That's Ravina. Rav Shila disagrees in the opposite direction. And he says like this: Zrikasei ben b'shoigeg b'mezid hurtza. No. If when you threw the blood, you knew that there was tuma, it's still going to affect. I'm not saying to do it, but you knew it and you did it, tzitz maratza, but there is a limit. What's the limit? How did the meat become tummy? How did the blood become tummy? Tumasoi b'shoigeg hurtza, but if the tuma came about b'mezid, then loy hurtza. And as everyone points out, it must be chevra midoi raisa. That tzitz is always meratza. If not, we wouldn't have this debate for sure. Ben b'shoigeg, ben b'mezid, the person, the dam, the basar, the chelev. The chachamim has said, hold on. Even though God says tzitz meratza, don't take advantage of it. So they made a penalty. The only machlekes is which scenario was penalized. Gavaldik. Was the penalty on the being metame, the basar and the dam, or was the penalty on the person who knew prior and he still did the zrik? It says bein b'shoigeg bein b'mezid. So touch it in. Hachi kama nitma b'shoigeg. The tuma came about b'shoigeg. Then zorko bein b'shoigeg bein b'mezid hurtza. V'hadiktani in our Mishnah. What's the implication? Dam shenizrak v'achar kach noida. And we made this inference, Tama de Nizrak v'achar kach noida, which implies Avol noida v'achar Nizrak loy tzitz is not maratza. No. Who adin? Even if you knew before. And you should not have thrown the blood, but sadly you did it nonetheless. And v'achar kach nizrak, why does the Mishnah say v'hadiktani nizrak v'achar kach noida? Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, because since the Mishnah is going to write right afterwards in the Sefer, the contrast, to show you where we don't say tzitz maratza by Nazir and by Pesach, which is when the person became tummy. And there the din is nitma haguf, eina tzitz maratza. You know when we say that? Even in the best of cases, even if you only found out afterwards, even if first you threw the blood and then you found out, that's important to write it that way, to emphasize that the tzitz is never maratza. So again, for the Mishnah to be symmetrical, ktani reisha, nami nizrak v'achar kach noida. So where are we at? It's very, very simple. Tzitz meratza biblically on everything. Guys, not on Pesach, not on the guf, not on Nazir. Take out Pesach, take out Nazir. Even when you brought a carbon betuma and you knew you're doing something wrong, after the fact, you achieved your atonement. The Chachamim said, hold on, people are going to abuse that. So they penalized either the case of Mezid on the knowledge of the Zrika or on the Mezid of how the Tuma came about. But coming back to our Mishnah, that by Korban Pesach, if the owner discovered he was Tamei, even though he didn't know it, you got to bring a Korban Pesach Sheni. But there's one exception, and that's a halacha l'Moshe Messinai, that if you find out now he was Tamei betumas mace, but if the mace was in a place that no one ever knew with certainty that there was a mace there, that's called tumas tohoim, halacha l'Moshe Messinai, that the tzitz will be manatzeh, and the person who now will not be allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. Now we found out that he was not fit during the zrika. That's the one exception. Tzitz is manatzeh, and he won't have to bring the Pesach Sheni. Boy, this rule of Tumas Tohaim, is it on the owner or is it even on the Kohen? Kohen! Hamaratze v'karban esayim. And guys, obviously we're speaking here either about a Nazir or we're speaking about the Pesach. But I'll tell you more than that. A Kohen, no, it goes on everything. A Kohen who does the avodah betuma invalidates all private karbanos. Oh, so this is a very broad question. If the carbon did the avodah, and then he discovered that he was tamei, and the rule is by all karbanos, the kohen was tamei, the avodah is pasul. What happens if he became tamei? He discovered he was tamei, but the source of tumas tohaim, hutraloi tumas atahaim oiloi. Me,
by a Kohen, Rabbi, by a Kohen, we don't say atzitz meratze.
Very good. We don't say. Very good. Otazoi. By Kohen, we don't say tzitz meratze. If a Kohen did the avodah betuma, the avodah is completely psula. Very good. Question is, are we going to be lenient by tumas tohaim? Me, amrinan ki gemiri tumas tohaim. The halacha l'Moshe gemiri means it's not a pasuk. We have this halacha l'Moshe Sinai regarding the owner, right? Even by the Pesach, even by the Nazir. But the Kohen loy gemiri, or no? Pasha, that was halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Oidilma bezevacha gemiri. God taught this rule regarding karbanis. Loishna b'Kohen, v'loishna b'Ba'alim. Fascinating that the Gemara is having a doubt as to what is the halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Amarava Tashema. Since we have a brayso taught by Rabbi Chia, the Tani Rabbi Chia, this dispensation is only regarding Tumas Meis. Now, what exactly is Rabbi Chia excluding? Meis l'ma'utamai l'chora lav l'ma'utei. That if Tumas Tohoim is coming from a sheretz, like there's a pile of sand, and there's a carcass of one of the Shmoyne Shiratzim in there. No one ever knew for certain, and you stuck your hand in there, and you touched the sheretz. You didn't know you touched the sheretz, and you did avodah, and now you discovered that you were tamei b'tuma sheretz. So like this, and there, that's what Rabbi Chia is saying. We don't have this leniency. So let's also further analyze. Ubimai yaskinan. What would be the case? So who even cares? So like this, if we're speaking about a nazir, mimahane, it's b'chal not a problem. Forget about the tzitz. The whole problem of a nazir becoming tamei, and therefore all of his days are knocked out. So all of the karbanos are irrelevant. Is only if a nazir becomes tamei b'tmei meis. The whole problem, the whole prohibition of a nazir is ki yamos meis olavam anachmana. He forfeits his days only by tumas meis. If the nazir becomes tamei b'tumas sheretz, we don't even care. So let's go. Elabayis Pesach. The owners here also. So we had this on Amad Aleph. So anichalaman the Amar ain't shechtem v'zarken al tamei sheretz. If that is the case, then you need a dispensation. But, and on that the Brisa says we don't give it. But according to the Manda Amar, that even if somebody is tamei b'tmei sheretz on the 14th, you can still shecht and throw for him. So hashto tuma yedua hutraloi. So tuma satohaim lekolchchen. We don't need that. So there, the only thing left is b'koyen. What happened again? That the kohen touched the sheretz. The sheretz was in a location that no one knew before with certainty that there was a sheretz there. And on that, Rabbi Chia has to tell you that we don't have a leniency by tumas sheretz. What does that imply? That if the kohen became tamei b'tmei meis, even the kohen, yes, hutraloi tumas atahoim. Beautiful. And therefore his avodah is going to be okay. Says the Gemara, no proof at all. Amar Rabbi Yosef, I'll tell you that Rabbi Chia was not talking about a kohen. A kohen doesn't have any dispensation for tumas tohaim. Tumas tohaim is only the heter that sits will be meratzeh by, let's go to Korban Pesach. And let's go details. We're speaking about the owners, and we're speaking about Pesach. So you said, L'mu'utei tumas sheretz. What about those who hold that even if you're Tami Bevadai, there's no problem. It's excluding something else altogether. Not tumas tohaim of sheretz, but tumas tohaim of a ziva. Now let's explain what that means. A person who's a zav, he had two of those emissions, seminal emissions. On one day or on 2 consecutive days. Even if he didn't have it 3 times, as far as these halachas, it's all the same. He needs to have shivas nekiyim. Now, let me ask you a question. If this zav, his 7th day is on the 14th, now what does a zav have to do with he can go to a stama mikveh, even to a ladies mikveh, he has to go to Mayim Chaim. He went to the Mayim Chaim. He's only going to be allowed to eat kachim at night. Parenthetically, if he is a zav that saw 3 years, then he's a mechusar kippurim. Then he's going to have to bring karbanos on the first day of Pesach. We're not speaking about that. We're speaking about a zav who only saw 2 years. He has to have 7 clean days. He went to Mayim Chaim. But you know what? What were to happen if after he went to the mikvah until Shkia, he had another 1 ziva emission? You know what happens? All of the 7 days are knocked out. He has to start again. Now, when he goes to the mikvah, and now it's the 14th in the afternoon, number 1 is you are allowed to bring a carbon Pesach for him. He can register on a carbon, like someone who's Tumei B'Tumei Sheretz. Even though now he's Tamei, we're following that shita, but tonight he can eat. Will he have another remission? No one knows. That's called Tumas Tohaim. Now, what happens if Taka, after he went to the mikvah and after they shechted the Pesach, he has a ziva emission? What's going to happen right now? When he has a ziva,
he's not going to be able to eat.
So that's the vart. So if you would say that Tumas halacha l'Moshe Messinai, that the tzitz is meratze for Tumas Tohaim, we would consider him someone who became Tamei b'Tumas Tohaim. And if the Pesach Rishon was brought, yes, Baruch, he will not be allowed to eat, but at least he won't have to bring a Pesach Sheni. What Rabbi is saying is that halacha l'Moshe Messinai is that Tumas Tohaim is only to Mei Meis, but if there is this Tumas Tohaim regarding Ziva, then he will not be fulfilling his obligation of Pesach Rishon. Even after the fact, Einat Tzitz Meratze, he will have to bring a Pesach Sheni. But the Rabbi statement is not connected to our question that we're leaving right now, whether this dispensation that Tzitz is Meratze will go to a kohen. Maybe the kohen will not. We don't have any proof at all from the Braisa of Rabbi. Gewaldig. Okay, Chavra, a lot more to be continued on this Tumas Tohaim in tomorrow's shiur.
Still not clear on this Ziva Tumas Tohaim, but
so let me repeat that. 1 second. Let me repeat that, Danny. We're going right now with the shita that says that shoichten v'zorken al tamei sheretz. Let's begin with that. That means if someone is coming on the 14th, as far as they know, tonight they'll become completely tahor, then you shech the Pesach on them. What should a zav do when a zav is on a 7th clean day on the 14th? What do you do? What's the question is?
You count them on the Pesach, just like a sheretz.
Just like a sheretz, but there's only one thing that he's not like a sheretz, and that is that for me not to touch a sheretz, it's my freedom of choice. This seminal emission is like an illness, it happens. And if the zav has any one emission during any time of the 7 days, it sois all the 7 clean days, and he has to start counting again, which means that he won't be able to eat it. Now they shechted for him. When they shechted, no one knew whether he'll become a zav again or not. So even if he becomes a zav afterwards, and now he knows he became a zav, we call that tumas tohaim. Because when they shechted for him, Danny, at that moment, was he fit or not fit? Let me ask him.
He was fit.
Well, no, 1 second. No, retroactively, he was not fit. But if tzitz is meratze for tumas tohaim of zivus, then we can still say he was fit. It's beautiful. If tzitz is meratze, post facto, nothing wrong happened. They sprinkled the dam for him. They had him in mind. He's not going to eat the Pesach because we're going with Shitas Rav and Avnasin and Shitas Rabbi Yeshua, that as long as the person was fit when the Pesach was brought, even if at the end of the day they didn't eat it, they still fulfilled their obligation. If tzitz is meratzah on Tumas Tohaim of Zivus, then this Jew won't have to bring Pesach Sheni. Because when they brought the Karban, even though now we discovered that his 7 days was knocked away, while they brought it, no one knew that he's going to have another remission. No one knew about it. And the
so we call that Tumas Tohaim?
We call that Tumas Tohaim. You know, it's any person who becomes Tameh from a source that no one knew. There was never a certainty here. It was never known. That's called Tumas Tohaim. And if the tzitz will be meratzah, then even though he knows he's Tameh, he will not eat the Pesach Rishon. He won't have to bring a Pesach Sheni. He fulfilled his mitzvah. That's Tanach Rab Chia. That Tumas Tohaim is only for Tamei Meis. And this Jew now retroactively was Tameh during the bringing of the Karban. And the rule is that tzitz is not meratzah on Tumas of the owners. Good.